During the 2020-2021 school year, when the pandemic forced us all to be at home, my students experienced a tremendous amount of grief, of loss. This population of students were already vulnerable. They'd been kicked out of most schools in the city, they were overage, they were undercredited, and many of them needed flexible school hours to care for their dependents and/or be caretakers to their loved ones. By the end of that school year, my students had lost 5 of their peers. While the school was at a funeral for one student, we got the call that another student had passed. Everyone was grieving. But let me back up a little bit. The day after Kobe Bryant died, I knew that I couldn't move forward as planned with a lesson about citing textual evidence. I knew that my students would want to process the death of someone that meant so much to the world. What I also knew is that Kobe's death could trigger feelings of their own losses. So I decided to create a memorial wall outside of my classroom. I wanted the entire school to be able to access it and to be able to participate. What I quickly learned is that my students and their peers were carrying so much loss. The names they wrote on the walls quickly added up. What I also noticed is that students who were typically disengaged in the classroom become very serious about this memorial wall. So fast forward to the end of the school year in 2021, when the loss of those 5 students were fresh. There's no academic model to prepare you for moments like that. There's no teacher training to fall back on. We'd had too many moments of silence. So I approached my school about creating a permanent memorial in the school, but they quickly decided against it because there's a disproportionate amount of students, in this population in particular, that don't make it past 25. So the wall would just keep growing and growing. Outside of my role as an educator, I'm an artist. And I was already conceptualizing an exhibition about Black youth and safe spaces to process emotion. With the permission from my school, I partnered with my students, my colleagues, and a licensed grief counselor to create an art installation. This is in loving memory. My students designed custom memorial balloons to honor their loved ones. They placed roses beneath blue bottles, reminiscent of the bottle trees of New Orleans. A colleague of mine hand-poured candles for us. And I taught them about the African tradition of pouring libations to honor the ancestors. And Love and Memory was for us, but because it existed as a public art installation, we wanted to invite members of the community to also contribute to honor their loved ones. Visitors wrote all over the memorial wall, they wrote on the floors, they poured libations, and they contributed memorabilia to honor their loved ones. One item that stood out to me was a small can of sweet potatoes because it reminded this person of their mother. My grandmother, who was a member of the Sensational 5 Gospel Choir of Forest City, Arkansas, for over 30 years, came to sing a special rendition of Going Up Yonder on opening night. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. One of my former students, Ardenae, mentors a group of young boys. She brought them to the exhibit to talk about their experiences with gun violence and the impact it has on their communities. A few months later, me and my students got the opportunity to install In Loving Memory again. And what I learned in doing this project a second time is that remembering the people they love and have lost doesn't get old. This is Saeed. He lost his grandfather when he was a kid, and he told me that this was the first time that he had fully processed his death and the impact it had on his life. Asking students to verbally process their grief inside of the classroom may not be sufficient. Yes, we can ask questions like, are you okay? Do you need to talk? But what do you do if they don't have the language? Art is where we can turn to when we don't have the words. Thank you.